Welcome. Welcome. You are listening to audio from the table. If you'd like to learn more about our community or donate to this ministry, please visit thetabletx.com.
Hey, Table Podcast, Brett here. So glad to be with you all. So we are in the midst of a series titled Holy Shift, a 21st Century Faith, where we're taking a fairly critical look at the culture that surrounds us and attempting to name certain values and practices and ways of living that we need to shift away from and what, as followers of Christ, we might move towards. So last week we looked at the shift from consumerism to inner freedom. This week, the title of the message is Holy Shift, Hustle Culture. So hustle culture refers to a movement of, how to describe it? It's like kind of hyper achievement, hyper striving. It's beyond just try hard, No, this is like, this is something else. It's this kind of striving in business, especially in entrepreneurial endeavors that emerged from Silicon Valley in the kind of broader tech industry in the 1990s and early 2000s. And it's now popularized and perpetuated all over social media for the last, few decade at least, maybe kind of, decade or two. And for those familiar with the Enneagram, it's basically like threes gone wild. So you might recognize it, for those unfamiliar, by social media and its hashtags. Hashtags like rise and grind, hustle harder, hustle never stops, sleep is for losers. That's definitely a major theme of hustle culture, is kind of denigrating sleep and rest and stuff, such. I want to give you a few quotes from hustle culture advocates. We'll start with Grant Cardone, who, the next guy I'm going to quote is Gary Vaynerchuk. I kind of like him. There's good there. He has a good heart. Grant Cardone, Okay, so here's his quote. Most people work 9 to 5. I work 95 hours per week. If you ever want to be a millionaire, you need to stop doing the 9 to 5 and start doing 95. He's quite a preacher. Or here's Gary Vaynerchuk. So he puts it this way. He says, on a daily basis, I am scrutinizing my 12 to 15 hour days down to the second and trying to fill it in with as much stuff, with the smartest stuff into every bucket. So that's micro speed. I just genuinely believe that 95 to 98% of the people reading this have it reversed. They're not squeezing every second out of every single day. I know parts of that are a little bit incoherent, partly because this is how Gary Vaynerchuk speaks. Like it's just fast in like stream of consciousness, and it's kind of a little bit frenetic. I followed him on for years on social media. I've quit a few years ago. I just couldn't take it anymore. But he does. I gotta say, he has a deeply human side that Grant Cardone does not. That I appreciate it. Like, yeah, there's a human side to Gary V, as he's known on social media. But having read many hundreds, maybe even thousands of his tweets, seen countless videos, I can name there is a franticness, a frenetic quality to his being that it's disturbing. Like for a while, he was making these videos called the Daily V that were basically like a 15-minute recap of his entire day. So like literally he had a camera crew following him around every day. Each night they would edit the video and then put it out in the morning for the previous day. I can't imagine like a camera crew. Just sounds unbelievably annoying. But you really got this inside look at how he was living. And I must admit, there's parts that are kind of alluring. I see where people are drawn to this. He has money and is meeting with celebrities, and it's like, wow, it's so cool. On the other hand, it was a crazy day. He starts work at like 6 a.m., works till 11 p.m. He has a phone in his hand at all times. And it's just, he just goes to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And in between meetings, he's churning out tweets and videos and content and podcast. Everything's just fast. I mean, it is frenetic and crazy. I mean, you could just tell he's like, I mean, if he's not on Adderall, like kind of abusing it, he's just by personality, like on Adderall, just, and so I think what happens is people, especially young people of a particular personality type, but, people in general, kind of see this, and it's like this vision of life that it's kind of alluring. And yet, if you, look a little deeper, it's really a way of living that is utterly predicated on competition and comparison. Why rise and grind? Why is sleep for losers? Well, because if you're sleeping, you're falling behind, right? The whole goal, the whole end point is to be a freaking winner, to be better than, everyone. And this is also why social media figures so prominently in the movement, because, see, it's not enough to just quietly work hard. A key part of the whole pleasure is letting others know that I'm hustling, that I'm getting after it, right? The whole idea is that I can kind of say in subtle and sometimes in not so subtle ways with via videos and podcasts and images, I can basically say, hey, look at me. Look at me. Look at how hard I am working. Look at me. I'm going to the gym and I read, 50 books a year, and I come in earlier and I stay later and I work faster and I'm better, right? Those people, they're weak, but I am strong. I am valuable. I am worthy of love and admiration. I am a somebody. And if I just stay this course, eventually it will all be worth it. Because one day I will arrive. I'll be rich and successful and handsome or beautiful, and I'll be the envy of all my former friends. And in that moment, it will all be worth it. Of course, people immersed in hustle culture rarely just come out and say it quite like that. But, scratch the surface of the ideology, scratch the surface of the religious fervor, and that's the narcissism and self-obsession going on. You see, the danger of hustle culture is that it is an idolatry of the optimized, beautified, and perfected self. It's really idolatry of the self. It's profoundly egocentric. It's profoundly narcissistic, which also means, by the way, that it's quite empty and will lead to a deep sense of unhappiness. And this is why I'm opposed to it. I'm not opposed to meaningful work or, even working hard and, long hours for a season when that's what's needed to get a job done. That's fine, Not everyone who's working, 50, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks is necessarily all bought into hustle culture. Though I'd say the more those hours go up, the more likely it is, that you're getting caught in that. But so it's not so much just literal, hours worked or something. Like, no, it's the spirit, it's the vibe of hustle culture. It really is it's a spirit of comparison, of competition, of never good enough, never satisfied. It is what the Bible has in mind when it uses phrases like the way of the world. But thanks be to God, there is a better way. I was thinking, well, what's the opposite of hustle culture? Because I don't think it's, laziness. Like, no. You see, if hustle culture is this kind of restless, competitive, comparative, driven, anxious, striving, go, you're falling behind, go, then I think actually its opposite is not, laziness or doing nothing. No, I think the opposite of it, it's inner peace. In short, a Christian response to hustle culture is a life marked by peace and contentment. Towards the end of his time in this material body on earth, Jesus summarized what he was leaving us with in this way. And it's interesting. Pay close attention. What does he leave us? He says this, verse 27 of John 14. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. When I think of hustle culture, I think of a troubled heart. It's a troubled, restless, anxious mind and inner world, a frenetic and frantic way of being that is getting nowhere faster and faster. But when I think of Christ, when I think of the spiritual path, I'm constantly struck by the peace that characterizes it. You see, peace is how I know I am in alignment with the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Peace is how I know that. Peace is the greatest gift Christ gives. When we were young, we might foolishly have wished that that Jesus in John 14:27 said, $1 million I leave you, all earthly power I give unto you. No, those are nothing compared to the peace of Christ. You may have heard the old story of the American investment banker who was on vacation, and so he went to the pier of this small Spanish coastal village where a small boat with just one fisherman was docked there. And inside the small boat, he noticed there were several large yellowfin tuna. And so the American complimented the fisherman on the quality of his catch, and he asked, like, hey, how long did it take you to bring those in? And the man replied, only a little while. And the American then asked, well, why don't you stay out longer and catch more fish? And the man explained basically that he had enough to support his family's needs. So the American then asked, well, but what do you do with the rest of your time? The Spanish fisherman said, well, I sleep late, I fish a little, I play with my children, take siestas with my wife Maria, I stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my friends. I have a full and rich and busy life. The American scoffed. He said, I have a Harvard MBA, and I could help you. You see, you should spend more time fishing. And with the proceeds, you can buy a bigger boat. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you'd have a whole fleet of fishing boats. Just think of it. Instead of selling your catch to a middleman, well, now you could sell directly to the processor. Eventually, you'd open your own cannery. You would control the product, the processing, and distribution. I mean, of course, you need to leave the small fishing village and you move to Mexico City and then to LA and eventually New York City, where from there you'll run your expanding enterprise. The fisherman asked, well, but how long will all this take? To which the American replied, well, 15 to 20 years. But what then? Asked the fisherman. The American laughed and said, well, that's the best part. When the time's right, you would announce an IPO. You'd sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. I mean, you would make millions. Millions, the fisherman said. Well, then what? The American said, well, then you'd retire. You'd move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siestas with your wife, stroll to the village in the evenings, sip wine and play guitar with your friends. You see, if you have the peace of Christ, the peace that passes all understanding, if you have contentment and joy, friend, you've already won. And that's the great lie of hustle culture. This idea like, you need to do something grand. You need to do something big. You need to become someone much more than you are now. Like, no. You need to have peace in your heart and mind. And here's the best part. It's a peace that cannot be taken away. You see, hustle culture, it's a fragile life. It's quite dependent on external circumstances. You need some things to go well. Hopefully the markets align and customers like your product, or your boss notices your efforts, or your CFO doesn't steal from you, or whatever. But Jesus gives us this beautiful promise. Again, verse 27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. You see, anything that the world gives us, it's temporary. It's fleeting. Money, power, success. It comes and it goes. And even when we get a thing, we then become anxious about losing it because the gifts of this world are temporary. It is, as I named earlier, it's just the way of the world. But church, Jesus does not give us gifts like the world gives. You see, this peace, it is always there. Christ offers it to us, not temporarily, but all the time, in every moment. The trick, though, is that we have to learn to return to it, to rediscover it over and over and over again, ever new. So that's the shift we need, from hustle and hurry to peace and contentment. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.